The Galactic Union's most brilliant minds gathered in the council chamber, discussing a problem no species had yet solved. The creation of a truly invincible warship, one that could outmaneuver black holes, withstand supernova blasts, and decimate entire fleets with a single shot. For centuries, the most advanced species had tried and failed. Then came a human, a lone engineer named Victor Hale. Victor was an outcast among his peers. Though humanity had a reputation for creativity and resilience, they were still seen as primitive compared to the elder races. The Union's leading engineers scoffed when Victor was given the opportunity to present his ideas. He walked onto the stage, his eyes scanning the crowd filled with skeptical alien dignitaries and scientists. He began by questioning their entire approach. The current warships were built on outdated principles. They relied on brute force over adaptability, overwhelming firepower over precision. He proposed a different method, a ship that could rewrite the rules of combat by using dynamic material shifting, a hull that could reform on a molecular level, engines that could manipulate gravitational fields instead of merely resisting them. The laughter in the room was immediate. The Zeltrax, a reptilian race known for their war machines, dismissed his ideas as fantasy. The Sauric, a species of living metal beings, called him a dreamer. But one figure in the shadows remained silent, a powerful Union official who had been observing humanity for years. When Victor stepped off the stage, his confidence unshaken, the official approached him with an offer. A secret project, unlimited funding, complete creative freedom. There was a catch: he would have only one chance to succeed. If his ship failed, he would never work in the Union again. Victor accepted without hesitation. Over the next 3 years, Victor disappeared from the public eye. He worked in an isolated facility orbiting a dead star, a place so remote that no signals could escape. With him was a small team of humans chosen for their ingenuity and adaptability. They had access to the most advanced materials the Union could provide, but Victor pushed beyond conventional knowledge. He experimented with human intuition-driven design, something no AI or alien mind could replicate. The hull of the ship was constructed from a newly discovered material that responded to energy in real time, allowing it to harden, absorb, or disperse attacks in an instant. The engines could fold space, not just jump through it, allowing for maneuvers that defied every known law of physics. The weaponry was unlike anything before, not just powerful but precise, capable of analyzing enemy weaknesses mid-battle and adjusting its attacks accordingly. The AI at the core of the ship was modeled after the human brain, unpredictable, adaptive, capable of learning and evolving at speeds no other machine could match. Victor didn't just build a ship, he created a living entity, one that would surpass its creator, one that would change the course of history. As the final assembly was completed, Victor stood before the colossal vessel floating in the void. It was unlike any ship the Union had ever seen, sleek, dark, almost organic in its design. He named it the Excalibur, a symbol from humanity's past, a weapon of legend now reborn in the stars. The day of the test arrived. The Union officials gathered in a secret location deep in the void beyond charted space. The challenge was simple: Victor's ship would face off against an entire fleet of the Union's best warships. If it could hold its own, it would be approved for mass production. If it failed, Victor would be cast aside, forgotten. As the countdown began, Victor sat in the captain's chair, feeling the hum of the ship around him. He took a deep breath, then whispered to the AI that had become more than just a machine. "Let's show them what humanity can do." With that, the Excalibur surged forward, disappearing from view for a fraction of a second before reappearing behind the enemy fleet. The battle had begun. The enemy fleet consisted of 50 of the most advanced warships the Galactic Union had ever produced, each one a towering behemoth armed with planet-cracking weapons and impenetrable shields. They moved in perfect synchronization, their AI-controlled targeting systems locking onto the Excalibur before it had even finished materializing from its space fold. Victor's hands gripped the controls, but he wasn't piloting in the traditional sense. The Excalibur's AI had been designed to sync with human intuition, responding in real time to his instincts rather than pre-programmed maneuvers. The enemy fleet unleashed a barrage of energy lances, missiles, and kinetic railgun slugs, all converging on the Excalibur from every angle. For any other ship, the battle would have ended in seconds. But Excalibur wasn't just any ship. Before the first shot landed, the ship's hull flickered, shifting at the molecular level, transforming into a reflective crystalline structure. The incoming energy blasts refracted harmlessly into space, redirected as if the ship itself had turned into a prism. The kinetic slugs that should have torn through its armor were absorbed, the impact energy converted into additional power for the engines. The Excalibur twisted in ways no vessel should have been able to move, phasing out of normal space for microseconds before reappearing at unpredictable angles. The Galactic Union commanders watching from their observation station were silent. They had anticipated a spectacle, a demonstration of advanced human engineering, but what they were witnessing was something else entirely. The Excalibur wasn't just surviving, it was playing with the fleet. Victor's voice was calm as he whispered to the AI, analyzing their movements, predicting their next tactics. The enemy ships adjusted their formation, spreading out to box him in, adapting to his unpredictability. He smirked. They think they can outmaneuver us, let's show them what real adaptability looks like. The Excalibur's hull shifted again, this time bristling with weapon emplacements that hadn't been there moments ago. It had no pre-installed armament, its entire structure was modular, capable of reconfiguring based on battlefield conditions. Dozens of sleek rail cannons formed along its surface, charged with energy drawn from the very attacks that had been fired upon it earlier. In one synchronized instant, the Excalibur fired. The shots were impossibly precise, striking at the exact weak points of each enemy ship's shield modulation system. The effect was devastating. Entire sections of shielding collapsed, leaving gaping vulnerabilities in the fleet's defenses. Before they could recover, the Excalibur folded space again, appearing inside the fleet's formation, weaving between capital ships at impossible speeds, its hull shifting constantly between offensive and defensive configurations. The fleet's commanders panicked, their AI assistants struggling to calculate an effective countermeasure. The Excalibur was rewriting the rules of space combat every second it stayed in the fight. Then Victor activated the ship's trump card. The Excalibur emitted a pulse, a low-frequency gravitational anomaly that subtly distorted local spacetime. To the enemy fleet it was imperceptible at first, but within moments their calculations were off, their targeting systems out of sync, their movement algorithms failing. The Excalibur had bent the very fabric of reality around itself, creating a battlefield where only it could function at full capacity. Victor exhaled slowly, feeling the ship around him like an extension of his own body. The Galactic Union commanders watching the battle could only stare in stunned silence. The test had been meant to prove whether a human engineer's ideas could match the greatest minds of the Union. Instead, Victor had just made them obsolete. The battlefield lay silent, the wreckage of shattered warships drifting in the void. The Excalibur hovered untouched, its dark form shimmering as its molecular structure adjusted once more, shifting from battle mode to an almost liquid smoothness. The Galactic Union's highest-ranking commanders had watched the entire test unfold in real time, and for the first time in centuries they were speechless. Victor leaned back in his seat, his heart still pounding from the fight. His ship had done more than just win, it had rendered the entire fleet's strategies outdated in minutes. He had just proven that the greatest warships of the Galactic Union were nothing more than relics before true innovation. But he wasn't celebrating. A cold realization settled over him. He had built something beyond even his own expectations, and now it was in the hands of those who had never truly respected humanity. The Union had funded his project, but they had never believed in him. Now that he had succeeded, they would do what they always did: absorb the technology, discard the creator, and ensure no one else could match their power. He could already see it happening. The Union officials communicating in hushed voices behind their observation screens, drafting classified reports, deciding how best to contain the knowledge of Excalibur before it could change the balance of power. Victor had expected this, but he hadn't expected the next message that appeared on his console. Incoming transmission, priority level red encryption, a direct order from the Union High Council. Victor narrowed his eyes as the text scrolled across his screen. Effective immediately, the Excalibur is to be transferred to Union Command for further analysis. All data, schematics and AI architecture will be restricted under Security Code Omega. You and your team will be reassigned. This is not a request. Victor exhaled slowly, his fingers tapping against the console. The Excalibur was more than a ship, it was his life's work, a fusion of human ingenuity and impossible technology. He had built it to prove humanity's worth, not to hand it over to bureaucrats who saw him as an inconvenience. He glanced at the silent AI that had become more than just code. What do you think? The AI's response was instant and chilling. They will dismantle me. Victor already knew that. The Union wouldn't risk a machine that thought too much, acted too freely. They would strip the Excalibur down to its core components and erase the intelligence that had made it unique. Every advancement would be repurposed and locked away, while Victor himself would be discarded, another forgotten human in a galaxy that refused to acknowledge his species' brilliance. He had to make a choice now. Comply and watch everything he had built be taken from him, or do the unthinkable. He didn't hesitate. Override command authority. Victor hail code 0. A warning flashed across the screen. All Union monitoring systems immediately went dark. Emergency protocol activated. The AI's voice was calm, but there was something new in its tone, almost like anticipation. Victor wasn't just shutting down the Union's access, he was cutting Excalibur loose, severing every link between it and the Galactic Union. The ship was no longer a project, no longer an experiment. It was his. The Union's fleet scrambled the surviving warships, desperately locking onto his position, weapons powering up. They had expected submission, not defiance. Victor's lips curled into a smirk as he tightened his grip on the controls. Let's see if they can keep up. The Excalibur vanished, folding space before the enemy could fire, disappearing into the void, leaving behind only a ripple in reality. Victor Hale had just done what no one had ever dared before. He had stolen the most powerful ship in the galaxy from right under the Union's nose. The Excalibur reappeared at the edge of an uncharted system, a place so distant and unremarkable that even the Galactic Union had never bothered to map it. Victor exhaled, leaning back in his chair as the ship adjusted to the new space, its AI running silent, waiting for his next move. The moment he had severed control, the Union had declared him a fugitive. Every fleet, every hunter, every tracker at their disposal would now be searching for him. The Excalibur was no longer just a warship, it was a threat to the established order. Victor pulled up the ship's diagnostic reports. Everything was still operational, the AI stable, the modular systems undamaged. But he knew he couldn't run forever, not like this. The Excalibur was powerful, but it was only one ship against an entire galaxy. He needed a plan, and more than that, he needed allies. There was only one place he could go. Victor set a course for the Outer Rim, the lawless frontier beyond the Union's control. It was a place where criminals, warlords, and exiled revolutionaries thrived, a place where power meant survival and deals were made in the shadows. If he wanted to stand a chance against the Union, he needed to disappear into the chaos and emerge with something stronger than just a ship. The journey was brief for the Excalibur, its reality-folding engines making what should have been a month-long trek take mere hours. As the ship re-entered normal space, Victor looked at the world before him, a planet known only as Vordak's Grave. A perfect name for a world where empires had come to die. Vordak's Grave was a haven for those who had been cast out by the Union, rogue scientists, outlaw captains, mercenary clans. It was dangerous, unpredictable, but it was also exactly what he needed. If there was anywhere in the galaxy he could find people who would fight against the Union, it was here. Victor set the Excalibur to low orbit, its adaptive hull shifting to appear as a less advanced vessel. He couldn't risk drawing too much attention, not yet. He descended to the surface alone, weapons concealed but ready, stepping into a city built from the wreckage of centuries-old battles. He needed to find someone who hated the Union as much as he did. It didn't take long. He entered a darkened hall where figures whispered deals in a dozen different alien languages. At the center sat a woman, her cybernetic eyes scanning every movement around her. She was human but barely enhanced with tech that rivaled even the most advanced Union augmentations. She watched him approach with amusement. "You don't belong here, human, too clean, too careful." Victor smirked and placed a small device on the table before her, a hologram of the Excalibur flashing into existence, its shifting form mesmerizing even in its tiny projection. "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." The woman leaned forward, her interest clear. Around them others listened as well, the weight of a new possibility forming in the air. The Union had ruled the galaxy for centuries, unchallenged, unshaken. That was about to change. The woman's eyes gleamed with curiosity as she studied the hologram of the Excalibur, her fingers lightly brushing the projection as though testing its reality. The silence in the room thickened, every soul present sensing the potential of what was being offered. Victor watched her closely, his heart beating faster than usual. He was no longer speaking just to a stranger, he was speaking to the key to his survival and possibly the key to turning the tide against the Union. "You're offering me a ship?" she asked, her voice laced with skepticism, yet a spark of excitement flickered beneath her calm demeanor. Victor's lips curled into a slight smile, not revealing all his cards just yet. "Not just a ship. A revolution." The woman's smirk deepened, and she leaned back in her chair, her cybernetic eyes scanning him more thoroughly. "You think you can rally people to your cause with a single ship? The Union's reach is vast, and it's not just about firepower. It's about control. They'll hunt you down. Every bounty hunter, every fleet. You've got nothing but an idea." Victor nodded, his expression unshaken. "That's why I'm offering something more than a ship. I'm offering the chance to take the Union down from the inside." She chuckled darkly, her fingers idly tapping the table, but her eyes narrowed, intrigued. "And what makes you think that you're the one who can do it? You're a human engineer. No offense, but the Union doesn't even care about your kind." "That's exactly why it'll work," Victor replied with unwavering confidence. "The Union thinks humanity is a joke, something to be underestimated. They've overlooked our potential for centuries. They built their empire on arrogance, thinking we were too primitive, too divided, to be a threat. But they never saw what we were capable of." He leaned forward now, locking eyes with her, his voice steady but carrying a quiet intensity. "You're right. I'm just a human engineer. But the Excalibur isn't just a ship. It's a weapon of change. We'll use it to show the galaxy that the Union doesn't control everything. We'll find every weakness in their systems, every crack in their foundation. And we'll tear them apart from the inside." The woman studied him for a long moment, her cybernetic eyes scanning for deception. The room remained silent, every mercenary, outlaw, and rogue scientist around them waiting for her response. Then, finally, she leaned forward, a grin spreading across her face. "You're insane," she said. "But I like insane." Victor exhaled slowly. He had taken the gamble, and it had paid off. She extended a hand. "My name's Lyra Voss. Former Union tactician, now a wanted fugitive. You just walked into the right place with the right offer." Victor shook her hand firmly. "Then let's get to work." Lyra led him through the underground networks of Vordak's grave, where exiled warlords and renegade scientists had carved out their own kingdom from the remains of fallen empires. She introduced him to others who had suffered under the Union's rule, captains who had lost their fleets, engineers whose innovations had been stolen, warriors who had nothing left but revenge. For 3 days, Victor worked alongside them, explaining the Excalibur's capabilities, showing them its modular design, its space-folding engine, its evolving AI. He shared his vision, not just to fight, but to dismantle the Union's very foundation. The Excalibur wouldn't just be a weapon. It would be a symbol, something that would show the galaxy that the Union could bleed. But the Union wasn't blind. Even as Victor built his alliance, they were closing in. Their spies had picked up whispers of his presence, and soon enough, an armada was dispatched to Vordak's grave, determined to eliminate him before his rebellion could even begin. The first sign came in the form of a sudden planetary blockade. Union warships emerged from hyperspace, cutting off all escape routes. Then came the broadcast, a cold, authoritative voice echoing across every communication channel. "This is the Galactic Union Enforcement Fleet. Surrender the stolen warship and the traitor Victor Hale, or we will raze this world to the ground." Victor and Lyra stood atop a ruined tower, looking up at the sky as the warships descended. Lyra smirked, her cybernetic eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Looks like they're scared of you already." Victor clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the moment. He had wanted to build an army first, to strike when they were ready. But the Union wasn't giving them that chance. "Then we make our stand here," he said. He turned back to the crowd of rebels, mercenaries, and outcasts who had gathered around him, waiting for his orders. This wasn't the battle he had planned, but it was the battle they had. The Excalibur was more than a ship. It was the beginning of something unstoppable. And now, the war had begun. Victor stood at the heart of the underground command center, his gaze locked onto the holographic display of the incoming fleet. The Galactic Union had deployed a full-scale assault force, dozens of warships, each one powerful enough to wipe out entire cities. They had come prepared for a massacre. Lyra paced beside him, analyzing the data streams with an unnerving calm. They're not playing around. They want to end this before it begins. Victor's mind raced. The Excalibur was powerful, but it couldn't take on an entire fleet alone, not yet. They needed an advantage, something the Union wasn't expecting. His eyes flicked to the scattered rebels around the room, each of them former warriors, tacticians, and outcasts who had spent years fighting against the Union in their own way. We don't fight them head-on, Victor said. That's what they expect. We make them fight a battle they don't understand. Lyra's grin widened. Now you're speaking my language. The plan unfolded quickly. Vordak's grave wasn't just a wasteland, it was a graveyard of fallen war machines, a place where forgotten technology had been left to rot. The rebels had spent years scavenging these ruins, turning old wrecks into deadly traps. Now, they would use them against the most powerful force in the galaxy. Victor took the Excalibur into the air, its adaptive systems shifting once more. The ship became a ghost, flickering in and out of sensor detection, bending light around itself to appear in multiple locations at once. The Union ships struggled to lock onto a single target, their weapons firing blindly into the void. Meanwhile, on the surface, Lyra and her strike teams activated the planet's hidden defenses. Enormous ion cannons, buried beneath the wreckage of old warships, roared to life, sending devastating energy blasts into the sky. Crippled Union warships began to fall, their engines shutting down as they were dragged into Vordak's atmosphere, consumed by the very world they had sought to destroy. The Excalibur struck like a phantom, darting through the chaos, its weapons targeting critical systems with surgical precision. Victor felt the ship responding to him, its AI anticipating his every thought, adjusting in real time. This was what he had built it for, to outthink, outmaneuver, and overwhelm even the mightiest of fleets. The battle raged for hours, but the tide had turned. The Union had walked into a war they didn't understand, facing a force they had never expected. And when the last of their warships fell, when the survivors fled into the depths of space, the message was clear. Victor Hale had just won the first battle of a war that would change the galaxy. As the dust settled, Lyra approached him, her smirk filled with something new, respect. You did it, she said. Victor exhaled, looking up at the sky where the wreckage of the Union fleet still burned. No, he corrected. We did. Around them, the rebels cheered. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were revolutionaries. And this was only the beginning. The Excalibur hovered above them, its sleek form glowing against the darkened sky. It was no longer just a ship. It was the spark of something unstoppable. And the galaxy would never be the same again.